setup. I'll let everyone on the panel introduce themselves. Please.
My name is Daniel Kmalek. I'm working developer relations at Nervos Network, and yeah, we're pretty much focused on interoperability.
I'm James Friel, work on the business development team at Axelar. We deliver secure cross-chain communication across Web3.
Hi everyone, my name is Sami. So I was part of the Genesis team at BNB Chain to help launch the network and then help scale and working on supporting the future growth of BNB Chain infrastructure.
Hi everyone, my name is Ruben Merre. I'm co-founder and CEO of Engrave. We have developed an end-to-end self-custody solution consisting of a new generation of hardware wallets, a new generation of backups.
Cool. My name is Itai. I'm the COO and one of the partners at Market Across. We're a Tel Aviv-based marketing and PR firm. All right, cool. So interoperability, big subject. Wanted to first, the idea is to kind of have it more as a conversation and less of a classical Q&A. Why is interoperability so important? Internet, that as we know it, isn't based on 30 or 40 or 50 protocols. There's one or two or three that kind of won. Why is it so important that all these multiple dozens of blockchains speak or even exist together?
Yeah, I think the first part in that question that you say, why does the internet only have two or three? Well, if you would have asked the internet in the very beginning that it needed to be decentralized, it would probably not be two or three protocols right now, right? If you look at the whole idea of blockchain, everything is about decentralization. So it would go a bit against the ethos of blockchain to sort of just having one single blockchain out there. And the real thing behind all of its decentralization is that everybody, wherever they are in the world, can actually bring their part in terms of innovation, and that means they need to be able to do it maybe on a new blockchain, maybe on a new consensus protocol, and yeah, eventually blockchain means innovation on that level, and if you only have one single blockchain, it's never going to be of the same kind of size.
Yeah, so from our perspective, we really see that like Web3, like decentralized applications that like emerging Internet of Value is going to be powered by network of networks. And we see today that even we're probably like in the low tens of millions, if even that, like number of users using decentralized apps. And we already see the types of issues that are happening there, like high transaction fees on like the Ethereum mainnet. Today, of course, we see a lot of alternative layer ones, the emerging layer two space, a lot of application side chains as well, like Axie Infinity is a really great example. Like
we'll get to Axie, don't worry.
So it's like, it is a good one because they have like the largest, one of the largest user base for a single application, but they have to use their own chain. So obviously these chains need ways to move assets between each other and also have applications that might be using multiple chains as the underlying infrastructure. So interoperability and the infrastructure to enable that's going to be quite critical, and we see that starting to emerge today.
Yeah, I think quickly, there are actually a number of security and network protocols working in the 2.0 space, and in fact, they've just been obfuscated from the users and the developers themselves, and that's what we're really trying to solve in the Web3 world.
All right, do you want to respond or?
No, I have.
All right, cool, so we'll take the other one. Okay, so interoperability is important for all the reasons that we just mentioned. So why is all this talk? What's stopping us? Is there roadblocks? Is it technical? Is it legal? Is it user-based? Why is it a challenge if it's so important?
Yeah, I think the community typically talks about it as the interoperability trilemma. And so you have trustlessness, sorry, it's a bit like a security aspect of it. So who is verifying transactions and how much does it cost to actually compromise them? Then you have generalizability, which basically comes down to, can we get that data across different blockchains? And thirdly, the transferability, where you basically say, how do we get the communication through the blockchains? And I would say you always have sort of a trade-off, and you've seen it recently with the hack of Ronin, the hack of Wormhole, that there is always sort of a growth bias in projects, especially in crypto, because everything is going so fast. You just want to get more users, get more adoption, and obviously you kind of forget about the processes, and in most cases that is the security layer. So if you look, for example, at Ronin, what did you...
We'll get to the bridge in a second.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah. So you're saying that for you, I want to summarize it, the roadblocks right now is moving too fast, there's too much demand, and then you're creating a supply that's not verified or cooked up enough?
Yeah, so it's a trade-off between these three parts of the trilemma, and also
Technical people, marketer, you know?
yeah, but also the usability part, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the infrastructure, whether it's bridges or other things like that, are just starting to like emerge within the last few months, really. And like I haven't really reached the point where they're being like battle tested, and we've seen, of course, like hacks. We will talk about those that have happened, but also the type of like general message passing bridges and these kind of things. Like there's also a whole other area of challenges around like user experience, like what does it mean for the end user if they have to like use a large number of different networks, or do we reach a point where it starts to become like quite seamless where they don't really have to know or even don't care, and then like the types of like network configurations and things like that just get pushed to their wallets or get detected automatically. Like that, like we're definitely not there yet, but that's kind of like the directionally where we're heading.
Okay.
I think the solution solving is actually pretty technically complex, and it's been a nascent industry in terms of how long we've been looking as an industry to solve this problem. But security is definitely not trivial in this case. So permission multi-sigs is not going to likely be the long-term solution. Security is going to have to come from decentralization.
Yeah, I can only agree that bridges are often one of the first things that people want to see being built and connecting different networks, so there's a lot of demand for this. And on the other hand, just to add what James said, if you add to this that you have other blockchain protocols than Ethereum, because for Ethereum probably you have the best solutions right now because it's for quite some time, then yeah, the technological complexity could be.
So that's a great, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add very quickly that if you talk about technology on securing these bridges, then zero knowledge proofs are something that's becoming very interesting in how to protect it.
So you just said something very interesting, which is, and I think you said it, which is, up until a few months ago, there wasn't massive demand, and then it kind of became like now there's two factions or three, but one of them is just EVM. So is EVM cross-chain, or is interoperability? Or when we talk about interoperability, it is between the EVM ecosystem and other ecosystems. Does EVM push the button? Like, how does that live together? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so EVM was basically built.
EVM, whoever doesn't know, is Ethereum Virtual Machine. It means that chains that work on a standard similar to Ethereum, that would be BNB, Avalanche, Ethereum, and a lot of others, they kind of live in a certain area and a lot of other ones don't, and it's pretty hard to connect.
Yeah, so EVM basically supports one coding language, which is Solidity. So if you don't think about Ethereum WebAssembly, the whole idea there was that the basic foundation of World Wide Web community decided to build something that is interoperable in the sense that it supports multiple more languages. EVM was sort of still getting in its evolution of development, and so they were actually working towards 1.5, and the Ethereum Foundation sort of shut it down and said we're going for the Ethereum WebAssembly version of it. Yeah.
So is it the gold standard, or is interoperability actually not about just how to better EVM?
I think it's beyond EVM. So EVM, right now we see a lot of new EVM chains for multiple reasons, because it has the most mature developer tooling, like all the infrastructure required, like oracles, data indexing, everything else required.
Add to MetaMask for all the users of MetaMask.
Exactly, wallets, all of those kind of things. So for new ecosystems or new chains to develop, and also like get that time for developers to get comfortable using that new tool set, like it's going to take some time. So for EVM, it's like maybe the easiest way to market today and to get the largest amount of developer adoption, but you still have some limitations in terms of how much can an EVM chain scale. Like most EVM chains today that you see will struggle to get above 300,000 users, or like any type of metric. Like if we want to talk about reaching tens of millions or hundreds of millions of users, you'll need to have different types of chain architectures, whether that's Solana or any of the others. I think those, like, ultimately having more choices for the developers is going to be like net positive for growing crypto adoption and use of decentralized applications.
All right.
Yeah, I just want to add to this that, for example, on EVM chains, you have ERC20 token, right? What is this token on some chain that is doesn't have the standard, right?
So yeah, that's I'm sure I'm not technical enough to understand, but a lot of interoperability could create a lot of synthetics, and that's kind of anyway. So I do want to touch on something you just kind of touched there. Full disclosure: I do work with one of the companies we're going to mention, so I work with Polkadot. But there are very big projects with a very big developer community and a pretty big following. You know, there's Polkadot, there's Cosmos, there's a few others. So there's this whole layer 0 concept happening. Isn't that going to solve all of this? Is that not enough? Is that the way to go? What do you guys think about that?
I think ultimately developer adoption and user adoption will like congregate around the chain architectures that they find most useful based on like the type of applications that are being built there. But ultimately more like this idea of like network of networks will be like many different types of interconnected networks. I think it's great to see like continued development happening in the Polkadot ecosystem, Cosmos and others as well.
Everyone's so kind today, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, Layer 0 is permission multisig, which is likely not long-term the secure answer to prevent these type of hacks that we've been seeing. It's going to require a solution that's decentralized and contains its own transport layer, not outsourcing that to oracles.
All right. So let's get into, I think, the topic that we all negated to. So whoever doesn't know, Axie Infinity, one of the hottest things in crypto right now, recently had a hack, which I'm not smart enough to tell you how it happened, but it happened through a bridge with their own rodent network, and that creates a lot of discussions about bridges in general. Is interoperability another way of saying let's just bridge everything, or is there other approaches? And what are the problems with bridges in general?
Yeah, so if you look what actually happened behind the scenes, it's always about validators, right? If you look at Ethereum as a network, they have 325,000 validators. If you look at the second biggest one, is I think Cardano, they have 2,000. So Cosmos had 130. And Axie Infinity, or let's say Rolling, they actually only had 9 validators, out of which 5 were from Sky Mavis, so the team behind Axie Infinity, and there were 5 of the 9 were actually compromised, and that's how $600 million got stolen. So now, recently I read that they went towards 21 validators, so a bit more, and also they raised $150 million to actually make sure that they can pay their users back. And thirdly, that actually came out yesterday, is that they just launched a $1 million bug bounty for the platform. Yeah.
But are bridges the future? Is interoperability equal bridges, or what?
So I think when you think about bridges, it's more than just movements of like tokens or even NFTs. It's also, I think, that general message passing for bridges also enables like a whole range of new types of use cases. So in the gaming context, for example, with bridges that allow that type of general message passing, like users will have a lot of freedom to, like the NFTs that they use in the game, trade them on their favorite marketplace. It doesn't matter if that's like BSC chain or XYZ chain. But the game will still be able to recognize those NFTs, like use the NFTs in the game and like persist state changes on the NFTs, regardless of which network it's on. So those kind of things are only like starting to happen today. In terms of like bridge security, yes, like so there's a thing like learning curve that the industry goes through. So like anytime there's this big exploit, there Axie Infinity recently, it was Wormhole before that, like all of them like hundreds of millions of dollars, like super large exploits, but there's lessons learned here that will improve kind of like how we develop this type of anti-fragile infrastructure that will enable interoperability.
It's actually funny for that. So you're saying it's about messages between blockchains. You guys are up to You guys do messages in blockchains, right? What's that about?
So it is similar to what he was saying, which is there's just a big education gap at the moment. Bridging is really just the tip of the iceberg here. People are thinking about pasting and minting other versions, wrapped versions, right? Which I think was the question that you were getting at before, and the fragmentation that causes. But general message passing will allow both assets to be moved cross-chain from applications, but it'll also allow application logic to be applied to assets. And using general message passing, you'll be able to sync state of these different applications cross-chain. But what that will cause is developers, app developers, will actually need to embrace a new asynchronous
messaging cross-chain. At the moment, Atom execution allows all that messaging to take place on a single chain, and that will take a little bit of evolution to get there.
Okay. I think I want to talk about bridges. Security. What needs to be done tomorrow to improve bridges? And what can users, by the way, so I don't know, did Axie users know what bridge is being used or not used? Is there, on a user basis, can you do better research on what bridging or whatever the project you're investing in work on if you're not technical? How do I do that?
I think also like the user education part is quite important. I think like we're like very early stages there. There's probably not a lot of easily accessible and good information for users to even have a framework or think about how to do due diligence on the security of a particular bridge. So that part definitely I think needs more like educational content, more contributions from communities to kind of help educators understand the risks of different security models of bridges much better than today.
I agree, and I think it's the same also with other concepts like layer 2s. It's good if people look where they are putting their money actually and maybe start asking questions to these teams that are behind those bridges.
All right.
Maybe I would just want to add, like, even if bridges were 100% secure, or let's say 99.999, because 100% doesn't exist, and people would then assume that they're safe to use bridges, it all starts with their private keys, just as everything in crypto, right? So the private keys they made, where did they make them? Did they make them in a secure fashion? Where are they keeping them? How do they sign transactions? All of that is important before you actually start interacting with a bridge. So it's sort of an end conversation, not just like bridges, they're secure, now let's use it.
Cool. Actually, it's a great follow-up. So, interoperability, how does that look for users? Am I going to have 30 wallets? Am I going to have private keys for all of these? Where am I going to store it? Is there going to be a situation that can all be in one place but not centralized? Where's custodianship even get into here? Like, what do we do? Because one of the reasons I think that, I can't say it's agreed on, but I think that one of the things that's pushing EVM is MetaMask. It's just there. I have one wallet, it's that address, and it just helps a lot of people, I think, to use it.
Yeah, so as a hardware wallet manufacturer and builder, I would say the real difficult part is in building something that is sort of military grade tamper-proof on a hardware level. At the same time, the firmware needs to be top-notch so that the whole security part is taken care of. We spent 3 years on that, so for us I would say that is the difficult part. The easy part, or let's say the relatively easy part, is adding new blockchains to the hardware wallet. Why? Because the cryptography is already in there. You just start from a master seed, and you say you want to support a new kind of elliptic curve, like let's say the one from Polkadot, that is mostly a story about derivation paths, and time from your development team, but it's nothing very challenging for them to do. And in that sense, you can have all your different blockchain protocols in the wallet. And obviously, if you want to do a bridge, you would have to interact with the online world. So you could say in our wallet, you interact with MetaMask, you sign the bridge transaction, and you only sort of, obviously at that point, always, you will be risking the amount you're actually sending out because it needs to be swapped. Yeah, just my 5 cents.
Yeah, so on that, I think already today, like the onboarding experience for net new users, like having to use decentralized apps, is pretty difficult. It's like major friction point. Like most users don't really, it's quite difficult as well. Generate your keys and seed phrase securely, store them from the point of generation securely throughout their life. It's like not really super accessible to anybody. So I think about it like the grandmother problem. If I think about my grandmother, she can message me on Facebook, no problem. But if I have to like send her an NFT or something like that, she's gonna try and figure out how to do it. She's probably gonna say thanks, but no thanks. So it's like, now new networks becomes like an additional friction point there. So okay, today like you have things like chain list and stuff like that. You could just like one click pull like RPC or like network configuration. So some of these things are happening, but the ideal scenario, like the endpoint where we want to go is it just becomes seamless, so like dApps can push the configurations to the wallet, like that's the kind of direction that we want to head, but obviously like we're still at like super early stages there. But definitely if we want to think about accelerating and growing adoption of users on decentralized apps, we need to take care of that part as well.
And it's beyond demanded. We do believe it's technologically possible. It's complex and it's going to take time to get there, but eventually we do think that we'll be able to, as I said before, completely obfuscate the security and networking layer so that users are having an interaction similar to using Facebook at the moment. Users understand that they're using the application, but they don't need to necessarily understand what the application is built on. And developers will have the opportunity to build on a layer 1 that optimizes whatever it is they're looking to build against, but they're still going to have access to global liquidity and global user base.
I think also decentralized identity systems and maybe naming systems might be important for these bridges. So users, for example, maybe can use the same name when they are sending between those different protocols. So I think some cross-chain cooperation probably will be needed on this topic.
Cool. I actually have kind of a question follow up to that. Just Bitcoin Miami just ended now in Miami. It was all Bitcoin. You see, this is called blockchain Paris. By the way, a lot of people now are looking at Bitcoin as a possibility of just run all these different stuff on it. The first time you're seeing a lot more chains and projects saying, well, let's do all this cool stuff that they're doing with the crypto world, but let's just use Bitcoin as the main, I would say, key asset on that. So it's a double question. Community or market-wise, do you feel there's starting to be a Bitcoin community and a crypto/blockchain community in market, in almost separation? And do you see a situation where we actually discover that Bitcoin is also pretty cool to build applications on?
You mean Bitcoin for applications, like?
Not to build exactly Bitcoin, but they're looking at the possibility of adding smart contracts to it, or even they get Luna. Luna saying, all right, why should Tether or USDC have Ether as their whatever lock in the beginning? Why not every Bitcoin? There's a lot of advancements coming on Bitcoin saying it's cool. You guys have been doing nice stuff in the blockchain world with these lendings and swaps and smart contracts. Let's see how that can live with Bitcoin. It's kind of the beginning of a movement. I don't know if it's
I think I'm not an expert on Bitcoin, but I think there was a new fork, and I'm sure if already implemented in Bitcoin to add some programming abilities, I believe. So it seems to start moving there, but this talk is happening for years now, right?
Because all this discussion has been about crossing chains that aren't Bitcoin altogether. What about like interacting more with Bitcoin? How does that live? Is there a Chinese wall, or are we breaking it? Is it getting higher? What do you think?
We are breaking it. Like you said earlier, it is a lot easier with, let's say, IBC, right, for cross-chain or interoperability functionality in the Cosmos ecosystem, or between EVM to EVM chain. But you are going to see in the near future a move towards bridging or interoperable functionality that includes Bitcoin. From an infrastructure building that, it is more complex, it's more capital intensive, it's more laborious. So for those reasons, maybe it wasn't the first solution that people were looking to build, to put their stake in the ground in this solution we're trying to build. But I do think in the near future, this is actually top of mind for people like Terra, which you mentioned, and I think you are actually going to see more utility out of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. And for example, here at Nervos, we are trying to build a bridge to Cardano, and a lot of blockchains are trying to build a bridge, for example, to Cardano or other UTXO chains. And as James said, it's just more complex technologically.
All right. So we have a pretty fair amount of time. I'm actually very proud that you guys weren't plugging yourself at all. So I actually do want to take this time. If everyone can kind of take half a minute, talk about something you're super excited that you guys are doing right now, pushing forward. So I don't know, a specific project or whatever, but something that you think that is moving the needle and that you're happy that you're part of it.
So maybe I start. So we are building optimistic rollup, which is EVM compatible. It's first optimistic rollup on a UTXO chain, and it's already on mainnet. And speaking of interoperability, there's also another layer to that. You can have different virtual machines. Like you can have, right now we have Ethereum virtual machine, but maybe you want to implement, I don't know, some other Rust virtual machine or JavaScript, etc. It might be important from a developer perspective.
I had to think for a minute about what I'm allowed to say.
Yeah.
But I think we're really excited that we'll be releasing the general message passing SDK. So for all the developers out there that are interested in that topic, moving beyond just bridging assets, but being able to actually move NFTs across chain and application logic within assets, it's something that we're going to be able to support soon. So I'm pretty excited about that.
You said NFTs. I thought we were able to do a whole panel about crypto without saying NFTs. No, never mind.
So for the BNB chain community, interoperability is one of the key things, key focus areas right now. So we're also moving from a single chain to multi-chain ecosystem. So we're launching right now the BSC application sidechain. So these will be like super scalable infrastructure for, especially for games, but other types of applications that are aiming to scale to hundreds of thousands, tens of millions of users, and that bridges there as well is like key part of that. I think that was really driven by the learning that we had over the last 18 months scaling BSC. So today has like over 1 million daily active addresses, users, like the largest layer 1 by number of users. But we also learned a lot there. So it's like this type of general purpose chain is good for certain things like DeFi where you want to maintain composability, but for gaming and other applications, you start to run into a number of issues, especially once the user numbers start scaling up a lot. So interoperability, like launching the BSC chains, and soon after that the partition chains are kind of key focus area for us.
Yeah, I'm also very excited about, we spent the last 4 years building sort of a new, let's say, device that can interface with the world of bridges, by extension the world of crypto and blockchain. And we try to solve all the issues you have with a typical hot wallet, also with the existing hardware wallets. And actually, since a week ago, we opened our shop permanently. So that means that right now you can actually get this piece of
Brick and mortar shop? No.
We have one in the metaverse in Decentraland, but we also have a web shop. No brick and mortar.
No brick and mortar. What is this?
Not yet. You never know.
19th century bullshit.
No, indeed. But yeah, we spent 3-4 years on actually getting something fully right from beginning to end. How do you create a key? What happens if tomorrow you drop that? Your kids need access to your crypto. All the steps in between. There's so many security conundrums that haven't been solved to this point that we spent a lot of time on thinking out. And yeah, if you just take it the topic of bridges can be as secure as they are, but if the thing you sign with or you interact with the online world with isn't secure on its own, you're set up for failure from the start.
All right, perfect. Some short time for Q&A. Anyone, whatever, or just no takers, no takers. All right, yeah. I think we're here alone. Excuse me.
I would like to know what you think about the Layer 0 solution in Stargate, if you think it's a good solution for interoperability.
Are you talking about the specific project Layer 0 or the concept of Layer 0 for like Cosmos or Polkadot? So the specific project.
I can answer that one first. So I think from an infrastructure perspective, super interesting. It's like the first time that you have this type of course, Axelar is doing similar things there as well, but that's the type of infrastructure today you need, like to have this type of ability to do like general message passing in a very cost-efficient way that does like way more. Like so Stargate is the first application built on top of the Layer 0 infrastructure, but with that you'll start to see many other new types of applications, like really cross-chain applications in the DeFi space, gaming, and potentially others as well. So from infrastructure perspective, super interesting. Of course, we're also an investor in Layer 0 through Binance Labs. So I think that type of infrastructure that enables this type of interoperability is super critical in order to like be able to really accelerate user growth and adoption of users in decentralized applications.
I think one thing to think about is the difference between proof of authority and proof of stake. Permission-led multi-sig versus a decentralized network. Talking about moving decentralized assets from a decentralized source chain across varying degrees, and in Layer 0's case, a centralized bridge in between or interoperability solution over to a decentralized destination chain. And I think to be able to do this at scale, it's going to require a decentralized interoperability solution in the middle.
All right. Anyone else? All right, cool. And let's start. There's one in the back.
Thanks a lot, guys. Super interesting. Just to follow up on the previous question, there is also one big player that seems to be quite strong, CCIP. I don't know if you followed, but Chainlink is really working on this. I wanted to know if any one of you had any thought on the solution and the design.
I'm not familiar enough or technical enough, so.
I'm not too familiar with the technical architecture of it, but I think ultimately like more choice for developers when it has like different types of bridge architectures, have different trust assumptions, so some of them might be more suitable for certain types of use cases, but ultimately I think like more choice for developers and users is also going to be quite important.
All right. Thank you very much.